The night shift in a hospital is a strange and silent world. As a veteran janitor, I'd spent the last 20 years in the quiet, echoing hallways of St. Jude's, a massive aging hospital in the heart of the city. The graveyard shift was my domain. I knew the rhythm of the place, the hushed footfalls of the nurses, the distant beeping of machines, the low hum of the life support systems. My rounds were a meditation, a silent walk through a world of life and death. The most unsettling part of my job was the pediatric wing. It had been shut down for years, a dark, forgotten space on the 3rd floor that was only ever opened for my monthly inspection and cleaning. One night, as I was pushing my cart through the silent, empty hallway of the abandoned wing, I saw it. A single patient's wristband, a small plastic band with a child's name written on it, was lying on the freshly cleaned floor. It was pristine, a bright new color against the dull, institutional tile. I froze, my hand on the handle of my cart. No one had been in this wing in years. I told myself it was an old relic that had fallen out of a forgotten box, a ghost of a past life. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and threw it in the trash. The building was on lockdown, the doors sealed. No one was supposed to be here, but the feeling of peace was gone, replaced by a cold, prickly sense of being observed. I finished my work in the pediatric wing and went back to the lower floors. But the memory of that wristband, so new and so clean, was a nagging thought in the back of my mind. I was sweeping the floors of the maternity ward, the low hum of the life support systems a constant, soothing presence, when I found another one, a single patient's wristband. This one, a different color, was lying in the middle of the floor, a bright new presence against the clean tile. I picked it up, my heart thudding in my chest. This was not a coincidence. This was deliberate. I threw it away again, a sense of a profound and terrible dread washing over me. I started to hear a new sound, a sound that was not the building, settling, not the hum of the machines. It was a soft, wet, tapping sound, a small, rhythmic noise that seemed to be coming from the floor above me, from the empty pediatric wing. It was the sound of a small, bare foot on a tiled floor, a quick, light tapping that was both innocent and deeply unsettling. I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor, my flashlight beam a trembling, terrified finger of light. The tapping stopped the moment I arrived. The hallway was silent, empty. My flashlight fell on the wall, and I saw it. Taped to the wall was a small, hand-drawn picture. It was a crude drawing of a stick figure, a small, childlike shape, holding a red balloon. My breath caught in my throat. This was not a prank. The wristbands and the drawings were a trail, a path laid out for me. The taps came again, this time from the hallway on my right, from a place where there was a long, dark corridor of empty rooms. The sound was getting louder, more insistent, a frantic, rhythmic tapping that was a clear, unmistakable demand. I started to see a fleeting movement in the periphery of my vision, a small, childlike shape that disappeared when I looked at it, a blur of motion that was a silent, taunting presence. I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that I was not alone. I was back in the empty pediatric wing, drawn there by a terrible, morbid curiosity, a compulsion to know what was in this place. The tapping was now a frantic, excited rhythm, 100 small bare feet tapping against the walls, the floors, the ceiling. The hallway was a terrifying labyrinth of sound and darkness, a place where 1,000 children were playing a terrible game. I saw a single drawing on the back wall of a long, dark hallway, a massive, crude drawing of a stick figure, its long, spindly limbs reaching out from the center of the wall, its face a grotesque, horrifying smile. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. I heard a new sound, a slow, rhythmic scratching, coming from inside the wall, right where the drawing's chest was. The scratching intensified, a quick, insistent cadence. That was impossible to mistake. The drawing began to peel away from the wall, The paper and chalk, a horrible scraping sound. A small skeletal hand, its fingers long and spindly, reached out from the wall. The tapping started again, this time from inside the walls. 100, 1,000, small, bare feet tapping against the walls. All of them trying to get out, all of them trying to get to me. The scratching sound intensified, and the drawing began. To rip away from the wall, the sound of tearing paper, a horrifying symphony of pain and longing. I ran. I didn't wait to see the rest of it. I ran out of the pediatric wing, out of the 3rd floor, and locked myself in a small utility closet on the 1st floor. I stayed there, a pale, shaking mess, until the morning shift found me. They found no drawings, no open doors, and the wall in the pediatric wing was a solid, unblemished expanse of plaster. I never worked another night shift again, but I can't shake the memory of that drawing, and the terrifying thought that the hospital wasn't just a place of death and healing. It was a place where some stories are trapped, waiting for the right moment to come out. The overnight shift at a rural 911 dispatch center is a lonely, quiet world. The calls are few and far between, a mix of late-night fender benders, domestic disputes, and the occasional lost hiker. I've been a dispatcher for 15 years, and I know the rhythm of the night, the voices of the locals, the familiar sounds of a town asleep. The quiet allows me to focus, to be a calm, steady presence in the chaos of a midnight emergency. One night, a little after 2 a.m., I received a call that broke the rhythm. The caller ID was a landline from an old, forgotten part of the county, a line that had been disconnected for years. I answered it, expecting static or a hang-up, but all I heard was silence. Not the dead air of a disconnected line, but the heavy, expectant silence of an open one. And in the background of the dead line, I heard a sound, a strange, faint, rhythmic clicking, a steady, hypnotic beat that sounded like a cheap, plastic toy. It was unsettling, but I dismissed it. A kid playing with a disconnected phone, a prank call. I cleared the line and moved on. The quiet returned, but the sound of that rhythmic clicking stayed with me, an unsettling ghost in the silence of the night. The next call came in less than an hour later. It was the same caller ID, the same disconnected landline. I answered it, my heart thumping in my chest. Silence, and the rhythmic clicking. Louder and more distinct this time, a precise, methodical beat that was now impossible to mistake for a child's toy. The sound of the clicking was now joined by a new sound, a faint, distorted voice, a high, childlike melody that sounded like a nursery rhyme being sung just out of earshot. The voice was warped and alien, a chilling, inhuman presence that was being broadcast over the dead line. I checked the caller ID again, and my blood ran cold. The calls were all coming from different, disconnected landlines, all of them in a very specific, remote part of the county, an old, forgotten section of the woods that was known for strange disappearances. The clicking sound started to sound like it was coming from inside the call center itself, a strange, phantom noise that seemed to follow me, a sound that was now in my head, a rhythmic, maddening beat that was a constant, unsettling presence in the silence of the night. I tried to call the local police to tell them about the strange calls, but all the lines were busy. Every single one of them. A cold, suffocating dread washed over me as I realized the calls weren't just coming to me. They were a signal, a lure, and I was trapped. The silent calls were now a constant, unrelenting presence. My console was lit up with 100 different calls, all of them from disconnected lines, all of them filled with the same rhythmic clicking and the same distorted, childlike nursery rhyme. The sound was deafening, a symphony of pure, unadulterated horror. The clicking was no longer a phantom sound. It was a real, physical presence, a sound that was now in the room with me, a sound that was coming from the darkness beyond the glow of my console. I saw a fleeting movement in the corner of my eye, a small, childlike shape that disappeared when I looked directly at it. I was in a state of catatonic terror, my body a block of ice, my mind screaming at me to run, but my feet refusing to move. I finally broke free of my paralysis and ran to the main server room, the heart of the dispatch center, hoping to find a way to trace the calls, to find a way to get out. The clicking was deafening now, a sound of wood and plastic, a sound of a toy being played with. I turned the corner and saw it. The figure, it was a small, childlike shape, a silent, motionless silhouette against the white glow of the servers. But its limbs were long and spindly, its body impossibly thin, and its head was tilted to the side, as if listening. The figure was holding a toy, a small, plastic music box. And the nursery rhyme, the chilling, distorted melody, was coming from the toy itself. I watched, frozen with terror, as the figure slowly raised the toy to its head and put the music box to its ear. The music stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. The figure slowly turned its head, its empty face staring directly at me, and it slowly raised a single, long, spindly finger to its lips. A horrifying, silent gesture, as if to say, "She." I ran. I didn't wait to see the rest of it. I ran out of the server room, out of the dispatch center, and into the night. I ran for hours, my lungs burning, my mind a blank slate of pure, unadulterated terror, until I stumbled into a gas station. The police, when I finally calmed down enough to call them, found nothing. The call center was silent and empty. The phones were all in working order, and the phantom calls were gone. I never worked the night shift again, but I can't shake the memory of that figure, and the terrifying, cold thought that the night shift wasn't just a job. It was a place where a silent, patient hunter was waiting for a sound to make its move. The factory was my graveyard, and I was its only living resident. My job was to monitor a handful of archaic machines on the night shift, a job that was more about being a silent, watchful presence than a hands-on mechanic. The factory was an enormous, cold, echoing space, filled with the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten workers and the rhythmic, hypnotic hum of the machines. The solitude was a comfort, a peaceful, meditative time in a world that was always too loud. One night, while I was doing my rounds, I stopped to admire the polished, mirror-like surface of a massive metal press. I was admiring the reflection of the empty factory, the long dark corridor of machines, when I saw it. A figure, a man was standing directly behind me, a tall, gaunt silhouette in the polished metal, his arms rigid at his sides, his face a blank, hollow mask. My heart stopped. I spun around, my flashlight a trembling, dancing finger of light, but there was nothing there, just the cold, empty factory floor and the rhythmic, hypnotic hum of the machines. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by the long hours and the solitude. The reflection had been a ghost, a remnant of my imagination. I chalked it up to a tired mind and continued my work, but the peaceful solitude was gone, replaced by a cold, prickly sense of unease. The feeling of unease grew into a cold, hard dread. The reflections started to become more frequent, more distinct. I saw the figure in the polished metal of more machines, in the dark, grimy glass of the windows, in the small, reflective puddles on the floor. He was always in the background, always a tall, gaunt silhouette with a blank, hollow face, and he was always watching me. He never moved when I looked at him, but I knew he was there. I started to hear a new sound, a strange, low, rhythmic, metallic tapping, a sound of something moving in a slow, methodical way, a sound that was coming from the machines themselves. The machines, which had always been a comforting presence, now felt like a silent, watchful audience, 100 metallic eyes that were all watching me. The tapping sound was getting closer, and I realized that the tapping was a signal, a message from the machines, a countdown to something I didn't want to know. The figure was in every reflection now, a constant, horrifying presence that was everywhere at once. I tried to call for help, but the radio was full of static, a low, garbled hiss that was a perfect, sickening white noise. The landline was dead. I was trapped in a cold, metal world, and the silent, watchful audience was all around me. I ran from machine to machine, my mind a blank slate of pure, unadulterated terror, trying to find an escape. The tapping was now deafening, a symphony of metal and bone, a sound of something trying to get out. I finally made it to the main control room, a small, glass-walled room in the center of the factory, a place where I was supposed to be safe. I was trying to shut down the machines, to turn off the rhythmic, hypnotic hum, to stop the tapping, to silence the world that was trying to tell me a horrifying story. The tapping was deafening now, and I saw the figure. Not a reflection this time. He was standing directly behind me, a tall, gaunt man with a blank, hollow face. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. I heard a voice, not a whisper, but a dry, scraping, rattling voice, a sound of metal and bone, a sound of something that had been waiting for a very long time. The voice came from right next to my ear. "You can't turn us off," it said. My breath caught in my throat. I turned my head, slowly, my eyes wide with terror, but there was nothing there. Just the air. But I felt something cold and skeletal traced the outline of my jaw, a single, long, thin finger brushing against my skin, a terrible, final touch. The lights in the control room all went out at once, leaving me in total darkness. I heard a low, guttural growl, and the sound of 100 machines starting up at once. Their rhythmic tapping a terrifying symphony of noise, a sound of 1,000 voices laughing at me, a sound of 1,000 stories being told, a sound of 1,000 machines coming to life. I don't remember what happened after that. I just remember the feel of that cold, skeletal finger on my face, and the sound of that dry, rattling voice in my ear. I ran from the control room, out of the factory, and locked myself in a small utility closet until dawn. The morning shift found me there, a pale, shaking mess. The machines were all in working order. The control room was silent and empty, and the factory was a quiet, empty space. I never worked another night shift again, but I can't shake the memory of that reflection, and the terrifying, cold thought that the night shift wasn't just a job. It was a place where a silent, patient hunter was waiting for a sound to make its move.